Good morning. Today is May 30th. I have not done one of these in a while, although it's been on my ever growing list of things to get around to. But hopefully, I'll jump back in the saddle, take care of some of these, get you up to speed on some things I've been reading, and maybe you find these things useful and interesting, and maybe you don't. It's up to you completely. So, I'm going to jump right into it. What we have here is an Edgar Rice Burroughs book called A Fighting Man of Mars. Um, that is a cover of it. And I will say, I love covers like this. Not only the fact that they are kind of like action covers, but due to the fact that this scene actually occurs in the book. That's something I love the most. You know, I love seeing covers for fantasy books and sci-fi books done by Frank Frazetta, but there are times that the cover that is on the book, whether he was commissioned to do it directly or someone just pasted it on there, sometimes have nothing really to do with the book except for like the barbarian guy. And there's usually a woman by his feet looking up lovingly, almost slavingly. It's a weird thing. Fantastic artist, will never take a thing away from him ever. But sometimes the image in the book do not mix. I don't even know if he did this one or not. I'm not sure who the cover artist is, but kudos to you. Besides being appropriate, it's a very damn good picture. I'll get to that later on. So, A Fighting Man of Mars is a story by Edgar Rice Burroughs, and it takes place on his world of Barsoom, who we know as Mars. And this is actually book 7 in his series. However, and I cannot stress this enough, this is the type of book that you do not have to read the first 6 Barsoom novels to understand. In fact, it's actually kind of a difference from a bunch of other ones, because this is one of those times where an Earthman going to Mars with his abilities is not the protagonist, and in fact hardly ever even makes an appearance in the book itself. So you can actually read this one standalone by itself and know everything you need to know. Because anything you need to know will always be introduced with like at least one paragraph somewhere. So hopefully you can understand that, take it for whatever you want to take it for, and move forward. Sorry, my notes are off to the side. I'm going to definitely be glancing in that direction. So, the book itself, just to understand what you're getting into, it's about, let's see, I got this from Project Gutenberg, the Australian Project Gutenberg. These books are actually in the public domain currently. So, sometimes you can get them for free on certain Gutenberg websites. I know the Project Gutenberg for the United States, I think, sticks to possibly that 95 years from original publication before it becomes in the public domain. I know I do a lot of work for LibriVox, and they won't put one on their website as a free audiobook unless it has been 95 years. So the fact that they let it lapse, like the estate of Edgar Rice Burroughs lets it lapse after like 50 years, doesn't mean that you'll see it on public domain in America, but Australia says, hey, you let it lapse, it's available, bam, it's on their website. So I went there and I got the text for it. And I copy it over into like Microsoft Word or whatever, and even at like a size 12 font, you're talking about a 170 page book. Now, if the material is interesting to read, personally, I can blow through 170 pages in like no time. In fact, when I used to commute from New Jersey into New York City 4 or 5 days a week, I used to blow through books like this in like 2 days of commuting on the train. They're just, I mean, if they're compelling enough, they'll make you read the words faster and just want to get to the next chapter. But not everyone is like me when it comes to that. Some are probably even better than I am. Some probably read at their own pace, at a slower pace than personally myself. And if you do, 170 pages should not take you a very long period of time. So, there you go. Not the biggest book in the world, but a very interesting one indeed. In fact, the best part about it is it's another chapter in a world that if you have read all the ones up until this 7th book, you want to explore more of. Now, let me segue to the side. What is this world? Again, trying to get you, as a new reader to this, get into it. Those who have read these before, that knows the literature, you might have to just sit through this for a couple minutes because, it's just what I'm going to do. So, oh, by the way, one comment on the length of this. I have created an audiobook for this. It's on this channel. In fact, there is an Edgar Rice Burroughs playlist available for you. And the runtime for that runs in at just shy of 10 hours. It's like 9 hours and 53 minutes or something like that. So if you would like to hear this voice narrate this book for you instead of reading it, or maybe you're in the car or going somewhere else, you can. There's 10 hours that you can listen to this. Let me know how you like it, so on and so forth. So, what is Barsoom? A lot of these books are taking place from the perspective, not only the protagonist, but from Mars itself. And Mars, when they name their planets, they don't do it according to Roman gods and Greek gods like we have here on Earth. They do it according to their gods, or their type of, what's the good word to look for? Like mythology, pantheon, whatever you want to call it. So to them, Mars is called Barsoom. In fact, they call Earth Jasum, and the other planets kind of follow accordingly. We're introduced to it in the first book by a man named John Carter, who's actually like an army man. He's like a lieutenant or a captain, and he was out in like one of the desert areas where the Apaches are out there, and he finds himself like trying to survive fighting against them, and finds himself like on a mountain or something like that. And I'm sorry if I'm getting some details wrong on the spot, but he dies in the conflict. And when he wakes up from death, he literally wakes up on another planet. And there's a reason why, and they get into it in that lore, which I'm not going to get into right now, but he wakes up on Mars. Or Barsoom, if you will. So, one of the things he found out is because his Earth body is used to Earth gravity and Mars has different ones, he has a different bodily structure. He's almost like Superman coming to Earth. Up there, though, he's stronger, maybe a little faster, and he can definitely have his leg muscles can make him jump much higher and much further. So he's like the original Superman, but there. No flight, no heat vision, and that kind of jazz. Just stronger muscularly, and therefore he can get into his adventures. And when he gets into adventures, of course, he finds like the beautiful woman princess and goes after her, yada yada. That's the very basics on what you're seeing here. Now let me bring you back to here. So, instead of following an Earthman on Barsoom, you're following a Barsoomian, a Martian, a person from that land, a red man from Mars, and what he has to go through. So, one of the things is, if you just want to see the story of an Earthman on Mars, or Barsoom, this is not going to be the story for you. You're just going to see a regular guy doing regular heroic deeds, getting into regular adventures. However, they are pretty vast. So one of the ways that I'll equate this, if I look what I have here, is there's a friend of mine who's very into Star Wars. And in his eyes, more Star Wars is good Star Wars. There is no bad Star Wars. There might be some stuff you won't read again or won't watch again. But the more you explore the landscape, you explore the galaxy, you explore their universe, the better. And that's actually what happens here. There are areas of the planet Barsoom that were not investigated before. And I'll tell you what, when you watch John Carter go through some of his adventures in the first 3 books, he does see a lot of different areas of the planet. But here you see even more areas that have not been explored before. So at least what's happening here is you're getting more of the world building and the landscape that can give you more of the world that you can enjoy. If you're a Game of Thrones fan at all, or I only watched the television show, I haven't read the books. But, and caveat is, I don't think I will until he finishes writing them. I know they happen so far apart to him physically actually authoring them that I'm just afraid the man just might die before he finishes writing the series, which would be horrible. But I've already gone through that once before, back when I had a big Stephen King kick. He was only about 3 books into what he planned to be a 7-book Gunslinger Dark Tower series when he was run over by a truck. Luckily, he survived that, but I think even one of the EMTs said, listen, dude, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Don't make this die with you. So, he eventually got back on his horse, wrote those books, finished it up. I would like R.R. Martin to finish his story, his Song of Ice and Fire. Then, yeah, maybe I'll pick it up and read them, see how much they differ from the movie, the TV show on HBO, Game of Thrones. But the only reason why I even say it is to explore other areas. There was whole sections of the book where all of a sudden they talked about a town called Dorne, and now they have to send people over to Dorne, and you meet their culture and how they do things and the adventures that occur in Dorne. And you meet the sand snakes and all their other ways. So, was that a necessary sidebar to go through? Not. Did we need to go see that? No. But did we enjoy going to see that? Yes, we did. Probably. There are a lot of people out there that have other opinions, but I'm going to assume it like that. So that is the story I'm trying to say here is, like going to other areas of a world that you're kind of familiar with already, A Fighting Man of Mars does this with an area which we call south and to the west of Helium, which is the major city of Barsoom, which you find Jaren Carter and everyone else. And you even find the main protagonist of here. Who is the main protagonist of here? Well, he's a lesser noble in the Twin Cities of Helium, and his name is Hadron. He's Hadron of Hastor. And what Hadron does is he is like a lieutenant within their navy or their army. I forgot what armed forces he's in. And he sees a beautiful woman, and like most of the men in these stories, just falls in love with her. Doesn't matter, I saw you, I believe you're an amazing person, I love you, I want to marry you by any way, shape, or form necessary. Of course, she is... I can't say the word that just came to mind. I'm trying to be nice here. Let's just say that she's a little smug and very full of herself and very full of her status in the city. Now, while Hadron is here, she might have a higher status than Hadron. But Hadron knows the people at the height of the hierarchy within Helium. So the fact that he's invited to the major four houses of Helium makes him more accessible to the upper echelons of the culture, that now that this girl that doesn't really want to give him the time of day sees the chance that if he gets invited there, she can go with him and is now part of the elite of the city. So for her own profit, decides she'll give this guy the time of day. Well, turns out they're actually out for a nice little walk one day, and she gets kidnapped. And it becomes a whole to-do thing. You know, another guy that was trying to go for her hand tried to say, hey, it was Hadron's fault. And he's like, dude, you're kidding me. You didn't do anything. You were even here. But one of the things that happens during the kidnapping that's very interesting is a patrol boat saw something was happening and went to go intercede. And all of a sudden, the whole thing just disintegrates. The metal of the entire ship, the metal the people were wearing, in midair, just disintegrates. And most of the people fall to their death. A very unique thing that's not happened in the stories before, and a very thing that has to be figured out. So, she's kidnapped by unknown people. Hadron goes around, does a little detective work, figures out it might be those people down in the south who we've never met before, we don't know anything about. Gets on his own little ship, goes out there to go pick her up. And this starts off the adventure. I mean, we're probably like not even in chapter 2, so to speak, and you know everything that's going to go on and where it has to go to, except what's going to happen, of course. But this adventure goes through, and I'll list them really quick, a whole bunch of different towns that you learn and have a little adventure in every single one of them. It starts off at Helium. As he goes down, he's following things. He makes his way to an old port city called Xanator, which was interesting because it gives you more details of Barsoom, because Barsoom used to be a watery planet like Earth. But then the atmosphere started getting thinner, the water started to recede and evaporate. So what happens is you would have coastal towns right on the edge of the water, and then the water would recede. and then a coastal town physically has to move to become a new coastal town. And they would keep doing that and following the water because shipping and trade was part of their economy. Eventually, they get down to the part where the last bits of water, and now the water's all gone. So as this little retreat of the waters was happening, you're getting a retreat of cities along the way. So other these cities are just becoming abandoned and die off. And he goes to the last vestige of a city that had died off a long time ago. It's in ruins, so to speak. But he goes down there, he gets shot down by some local wildlife, so to speak, and it's a weird way to say shot down by, but yeah, there are some other aliens on the planet. And as he's kind of skulking around and gets in the city, he does see a woman who's enslaved by the green men of Mars. And he finds a way to get her out, and they go out on their own, escaping adventure. And eventually they make it over to the next town called Janeth, where they thought they would find some people, help them out, and give our friend Hadron more information that he can go find his love of his life, whose name, by the way, is Sonomator. Of course, when they get there, they're thought of as spies, immediately captured, immediately put into prison, and he finds some other people to help him out there, and they put to something called the Death, which is like lowering a grate down into the abyss that they have no idea what's down there. And he goes down there, finds out, hey, we can live down here for a little bit, continues the adventure. He has to get topside, he's got to resave the girl that was with him, and save the girl he was after, along with the dude that's helping him out where he is. Of course, while they're down there, they're finding bones and bodies and old armor and old weapons. And oh, by the way, they come across a huge-ass lizard. And they have their adventure with him. Very interesting part of this story. Then they find another town. They get into it. Again, practically immediately captured again. He's got to go through all this kind of stuff until there's finally an escape that goes there. And they make their way over to a new town called Jama. I tell you, the way they keep going from setting to setting to setting just brings the story, just pulling it along. And pulls your interest, or at least it brought my interest along with it as well. It almost reminds me a little bit of Empire Strikes Back. I mean, you had just come out of Star Wars with a desert planet and space. And now what's happening afterwards? They go to Empire. Now you're on a frozen planet of Hoth. You're going to the swamps of Dagobah. There's a cloud city of Bespin. And characters. You find bounty hunters and a Yoda and Lando Calrissian and even a Yeti kind of Wampa. You find all these different things. And these books have a tendency to do that too. They take you to new locations. You see different kinds of aliens. You see different types of people. And just the fighting that has to happen to escape or to rescue or to do something else is just pretty amazing. But I digress. As they move away, they actually find a new city called Jama, where they find an old inventor, kind of what's the word I'm looking for? I'm sorry. He's kind of squirreling himself away. Hermit. That's the word I'm looking for. Not hobbit. Hermit. He's hermiting himself away in this little town. And of course, he's got his helpers around there. And you find out that he actually invented that little disintegrating ray that you saw in the beginning of the book. And he had other ones too. One that infects flesh, one that infects, wood, one that infects metal. Just an inventor. Crazy freaking guy. And you also find out that he invented some kind of paint that can be resistant to these kind of disintegrating rays. In fact, that's where it was interesting, because originally, when your hero was captured with the woman that he saved, and her name is Tavia, by the way, he went on a flyer that was colored that blue. And the people who hold these rays and where the inventor originally was and who have this blue paint is a different city called Jahar. So when they went to Janeth, they happened to be in an airboat who had the color of Jahar, so that's why everyone was so afraid of him and threw him in prison to begin with. But now they found the person who created all this stuff. And besides that, he also invented like a invisible paint, the way it refracts light. And they kind of go into a scientific definition of how this would even work. But he's got an invisible paint, and that comes to play later on pretty soon, because our protagonist used it to make a ship invisible and puts it on a cloak that he can skulk around in the enemy's towns. invisible as well, almost like a Harry Potter kind of thing there, and so on and so forth. But the adventure continues, where he eventually has his boat, and now he's going to go to this Jahar, because they're the people who kidnapped his Sonoma Torah to begin with. And he goes out there to try to go find her, and they get into battles, and there's a rescue, and yada yada, and they get out, and eventually there's going to be this huge air battle between the Jaharian fleet that wants to take over all of Barsoom, and the Helium fleet that heard that it was Jahar, and they're coming after him. But now you got a problem. The Jaharian fleet has these disintegrating ray rifles. They'll decimate the Helium fleet, unless our protagonist, Hadron, can get there in time. And then, let's just say the rest goes on. You get the huge air battle, you get the twist, now we're missing these people again, yada yada, and it goes on, it gets you to the nice ending, and then there's the end to it. But that's the whole thing. You followed this thing along through, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's at least 7 or 8 cities. There's at least 3 bad people throughout the adventures in these things. You got 2 damsels in distress. You've got air battles and lizard battles, and you've got just fighting to escape cities. And all this done within 170 pages. Again, a real page turner. So, this is how you follow this fighting man of Mars. I was happy I did this. I had done 1 or 2 other Barsoom books. I haven't done from the beginning yet, but I know before this, I did The Mastermind of Mars that just came into the public domain. Again, another audiobook that's available out here. And also, again, one that you wouldn't have to really know much that happened before. Because Mastermind of Mars actually takes a different Earthman making his way to Barsoom, and you follow his stories. Now, while the main protagonist of a John Carter will make a cameo in, say, Mastermind of Mars or A Fighting Man of Mars, you don't have to know much about anything at all. Again, as a good writer, Edgar Rice Burroughs gives you that quick little paragraph or 2, which gives you all the history you need without giving you all the details you would require as you move forward. So there you have it. I'm going to end it here. We got about 20 minutes or so into this already. I'm sure I've talked enough, and I've got more of these things to try to get out for everyone's listening pleasure as well. But I'll stop here. Again, the whole Barsoom storyline, it's entertaining. They're the old-fashioned pulp books, novels, comics almost, if you will, but the comics came later. But it's made to just bring you along. And in fact, a lot of these stories, even the ones that Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote, originally appeared in weekly magazines, literary magazines of their time. So they would come all across after like 4 to 6 issues in a row. And in fact, that's actually what happened with this one as well, where this book actually was in something called the Blue Book. It was in April through September of 1930. It was 6 issues of a magazine that probably had between like 4 and 6 stories within it, that this would be a chunk of it. Now, 6 issues of this magazine, 170 pages, do the quick math, you're talking about 30 pages of a magazine in each, give or take, including pictures, by the way. So, the magazines were probably pretty voluminous because they had multiple stories in it. But, there you go. I'm already working on the next one of these. It's called The Swords of Mars. In fact, I've finished recording it. I'm in the middle of editing it. It'll come out here soon. I'll even give you my report on that shortly as well. And the one after that I'm also working on as well. So I'm going to finish up this series completely. So, if you want, wait to listen. Go out and read them for yourself. I do believe that the Project Gutenberg Australia has them all out there. And I'm going to throw a link to that in the bottom of the description here, along with a link over to the audiobook if you wish to listen to that. Otherwise, if this was helpful for you, I should say, I'm very happy to do this. If it wasn't, I'm sorry, maybe next time, or not at all. In the meantime, this was the end of Memorial Day. It was yesterday. I hope everyone had a great weekend, and I hope to talk to you very soon. All right, bye-bye now. Hi. Real quick, I remembered after I was done recording the first part of this that I forgot to mention something very interesting. So I might just put this at the end of the video, if not splice it in between, but we'll see what happens. Mainly, in the universe of Edgar Rice Burroughs, he has begun to do his own like MCU thing where he's kind of like bringing pieces together from other books and novels and series that he does. The very introduction to this book, or the prologue, if you will, is a man who finds. No, he's tending an invention of a friend of his. And that invention is called, the Gridley Wave, made after the person whose name is Gridley who created it. And the Gridley Wave was able to, like, be a radio to space or to other dimensions or whatever have you. But it was there. And the book begins with an introduction that he's been sending out this Gridley wave into the universe. And this dude, because Gridley was kind of away on his own expeditions, would come into his office and check to see how the machine's working. Turns out he did receive a response. And the response came over some kind of like Morse code or whatever else. And it actually was from John Carter on Barsoom. Actually, no, I'm sorry, not John Carter. From Ulysses Paxton, who was the man from the Mastermind of Mars, who recognized the wave, made a message to send back in response. Now, what makes it very interesting, by the way, is that the Gridley is the main protagonist of a whole other series of Edgar Rice Burroughs called Pellicular. And Pellicular is about the Earth's hollow core. It's like there's the Earth but underneath whatever length of or depth of whatever is this internal world. Now, I think you can get to it through like some weird lava passage through the Arctic or something like that, or the Antarctic. But this is the first time he's taken his book novels of Pellicular and linked them into Barsoom. Now, Pellicular itself has 7 books in their series, according to my notes. And therefore, this is the first time you're seeing that the Pellicular series and the Barsoom series do occur within the same universe. And now, interestingly enough, in the 7-book Pellicular series, book 4 does a crossover with his Tarzan series. And Tarzan has like 26 books. And number 13 of that series was called Tarzan at the Earth's Core. So what's happening here is you now have a link between 26 Tarzan novels, 7 Pellicular novels, and at least 8 Barsoom novels. But I want to just add that here so people can understand that if you really wanted to be completely immersive in the universe of Edgar Rice Burroughs, this could open up like 2 other series for you, in which case now you've got 30 books to read in total to really enjoy yourself and occupy your time. I don't know why I skipped this along the way, but, it just happens. Hopefully that's a good piece of knowledge for you, all right? Take care.